Hello. I find it strange that I should be rushing to the defence of millennial woes, but I find that life is very strange anyway. Apparently he has acknowledged the possibility, or even the truth, that one can be not white and English, and this admission has enraged Brutus the Saxon. And he's just uploaded a video dealing with this point, saying how ridiculous, how shocking, how outrageous that millennial woes of all people should even acknowledge that one can be English and not white. Now, I think this kind of outrage is due to a category error being made by people who are not legally trained. That's why they get themselves confused after they make their category error, and it's all very unfortunate because they cause themselves a lot of distress and other people too. Now, I'll try to make it simple for you by emphasizing the difference between race and nationality. So I think it's already being acknowledged that you can now be British without being white, as you can be American without being white. So this is something that you should bear in mind. But nationality, well, unlike, you can be born with a nationality that you are conferred by your parentage, by the country that you were born in, and by the birth certificate you get and that kind of thing. So basically, your genetics get passed on, including your skin colour and the whatever genetic inheritance you would inherit from your parents, including their nationality and their race. Now, your nationality can be acquired in that you might not be an American national, but you become an American national, or you might lose your American citizenship if they take it away, if the American government chooses to take it away. So it can be acquired or lost by arbitrary means, but your skin colour, your genetic inheritance is so much a part of you that it's, unless you're Michael Jackson or are prepared to do extraordinary things to your appearance, you're going to be left with the genetic inheritance and physical attributes that a member of your race would have. Now, why is it so controversial? I think it's because ethno-nationalists like Brutus, they basically want to go back to a time when anyone who was British would be automatically linked to being white. I think that is what it is, really. You can't say the same thing about the Americans, because the Americans know that once upon a time the continent of America was inhabited by the Indo-American, i.e. the Native American, and he looks quite different to the white American, the European, who settled and took the land of the Native American. They are two different races. So I really have to emphasize, what is really an undisputed fact. You're born with your race, as well as your nationality, but you can acquire and lose your nationality, as you can, like a bank account or things that can be, acquired and lost, like property and rights and, deeds of ownership and that kind of thing. But you're basically left with your skin colour, and that is unchangeable, really. And as I've said, Brutus wants to turn back time to when to talk about somebody being English is to talk about somebody being white. And this is, for ethno-nationalists, no longer the case. You have all these foreigners who've settled, and you may regard them as invaders, but there they are. They're there and they're settled, and they have acquired the nationality of your nation. What is to be done about it if you wish to change things? Well, for the more energetic ethno-nationalists, shall we say, you can kill or kick them out. And I suppose that's why, the government gets so triggered. It feels it has to protect the people that these ethno-nationalists clearly want to kill and kick out. They don't quite say that, but, obviously deportation is talked about, and so these are things that upset people, and understandably governments want to maintain public order and obviously protect the people they have taken such great care to invite into their country as cheap labour. So we have to be very careful here about what it is we really want to do, without getting ourselves into trouble, because unstated in Brutus's video is the desire really to turn back time. I guess if you can't turn back time, you can kick them out, and that is not quite allowed to be said, so you don't say it. And if you don't want to kick them out, you could kill them, which is not allowed because it's incitement to crime and public disorder and all these terrible things. So you're not allowed to say these things. So what is it that ethno-nationalists are trying to say? One could be kind and think, well, perhaps all they mean is, well, if recently arrived non-white immigrants can be English, what the hell are we? Who are we then? Us white indigenous people who are suddenly victims of a kind of identity appropriation by the foreigner. So, this is a difficulty, but I have solved it. You can actually, not even have to listen to me and go to Brutus's stream. No, not stream. It's actually a video that he uploaded, and I basically explain in I think 2 short paragraphs what I think the solution is, which is to use the IC police codes, which is the race codes, basically. So one copper in his cop car might say to another copper in his cop car a bit further along that I see one male suspect wearing a MAGA hat is walking towards the second police car, for example, and he's a suspect and he wants this person to be apprehended, and he doesn't want just any white guy to be apprehended. It has to be this white guy in a MAGA hat, for example. So IC1 male just does a trick, and it could be IC2 male, which is somebody a little dusky, Mediterranean looking, maybe South American, maybe a bit Arab looking, and I think this kind of mistake was the cause of the death of Charles Menendez. I think that was his name. He was shot dead on the London Underground by the police, and he wasn't even Muslim. He was just slightly dusky looking and looked as if he could be Muslim, but in fact he was South American and from Brazil, I seem to remember. Some electrician he was. So anyway, that's what the police try to do. They don't want to ask this suspect wearing a MAGA hat whether he identifies as Scandinavian white or Teutonic white or Irish white or whatever. It's just a kind of appearance thing. If you look white and you're male and you're wearing a MAGA hat and there ain't no other white males wearing a MAGA hat around, the second copper in the police car is meant to apprehend the suspect. They don't want, subjective monologues about, how the suspect feels, whether he feels himself to be English or Welsh or Scottish or, an Ulsterman or whatever. It's just whatever he looks like, that'll do. So it's basically an appearance thing. And since people like Brutus want to identify themselves as white and only want to seek fellowship with other people who look like them, then IC1 English will do very well, won't it? And then the Englishmen who fit into the category of IC2, which is Mediterranean, they can be IC2 English. IC3 is black, I seem to remember. So the black people born and bred in England and who have no other passport, so they can't be, sent to wherever they came from or where they could go, they'll be, IC3 English. And IC4, that's brown people, same thing. IC5, Oriental people. And that would be the new way of categorizing all these different coloured people who are all born and bred in England and ditto, Scottish residents and citizens of Britain who can be IC1 all the way to IC6. And I think this should be adopted globally. I find it very annoying that the Americans, they talk about being African American, and you think, oh, come on, make up your mind about which continent you're on. You're either in Africa or you're in America. You can't be, what about, can there be American Africans? What about American Asians or Asian Americans? This is stupid. The the categorization is fundamentally wrong to talk about African Americans. So the previous talk about being a black American was correct. So I think the IC code should be adopted, globally, all the way from the Western Empire to, I guess, empires of the East, like China. Now, China is an empire, and it does rule over a multitude of people. I think the 56, yes, I did get a book when I was in China of the 56 ethnicities that are contained in China, which is an empire. So they don't look alike at all, or they may look alike to people who want to think that Oriental people all look alike, but I guess people in the know would know how to tell the difference. So, this is the simple solution of categorizing these, pesky people in England with British citizenship who aren't all white. But I suspect that people like Brutus will say, well, it's just easier to kick them out, isn't it? And therein lies the problem of ethno-nationalism. When you say things like that, people start getting alarmed, and then they go to the government and say, people like Brutus want to kill me or kick me out. I'm not sure which, but, better safe than sorry, so we'll get the heavy hammer of censorship to bear down hard on people like Brutus. So I think nationalists should, really begin to tidy up the mess that's in their heads. I'm here to help you all do that. I'm very helpful, I think, in explaining things simply to people who aren't terribly educated, but who, actually want to understand what I'm trying to say. Now, this is not the first time I've tried to explain my ideas to people on race and nationality and, why people shouldn't get confused because it only shows them up for being, a bit dim, a bit uneducated, and not able to, manipulate abstract concepts in their minds. And I think it's okay, something that my legal training has allowed me to do better than most people, but to be able to, define ideas accurately will enormously tidy up our thinking, and this is what I encourage nationalists to do. Now, as I was saying, I have, explained this idea to people, and they kind of look at me goggle-eyed and say, we're not going to give up our nationality, we're not going to call ourselves IC1. And I say things like, look, IC1, that's good, isn't it? You're still number one, and everybody else is, number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're still number one. White people, just, why don't you go with that? And the kind of, you can't really budge them, because really, I suppose, they just rather kick them all out. And then, then they get into trouble with hate speech and that kind of thing. But I guess they can't understand. It's like, all these Japanese people, they look Japanese, like, why can't we be more like them? Why can't we be associated, as a race with a particular country and be perceived to look alike by, other people? And so I took the trouble of looking up the requirements of becoming Japanese. And there's actually a great song about turning Japanese. But here we are. Japan is a jus sanguinis state, which means nationality is deferred by blood, not by location of birth. If a baby is born in Japan and either of its parents is a Japanese national, then the baby will have Japanese citizenship. If a child is born to Chinese parents living in Japan, it won't automatically be granted citizenship. But there is a possibility of that at the discretion of the Japanese government. So this is something to bear in mind. Though there are numerous requirements and a lot of paperwork, Japanese citizenship isn't impossible to obtain. Just be aware, Japan does not permit dual citizenship, therefore you will have to renounce your current nationality. But anyway, these are all things that it is possible for you to do should you wish to acquire Japanese nationality, and it's possible. So you could be black and Japanese. That's a point I'm trying to make. Now, I'll read you the Japanese citizenship requirements. To become a Japanese citizen, you must have lived in the country for at least 5 years and be over 20 years of age. Your mental health must be good and you must be of good character. Having a criminal record could be detrimental to your application, but does not, mean that it will automatically mean you're disqualified. But each case is examined individually, and the seriousness of the crime and when it was committed are taken into account. As always, officials will want to see proof that you can support yourself and your family. In addition to these basic requirements, there is an enormous amount of required documentation. Again, it's difficult but not impossible. This includes everything from your birth certificate to the names of your family written in katakana, one of the Japanese writing systems. So, okay, you may not be able to write in Japanese, but I'm sure you can get somebody to write it in Japanese for you at a price if that's what you want. So, I'm sure we can dig up maybe even some Africans who have become, I'm sure it's not impossible. Perhaps somebody will look that up for me. Some applicants will have their home and possibly their workplace inspected by officials. This process is essentially done to check the details provided in your application are correct. Most applicants aren't subject to such an inspection, and the likelihood of getting one depends on various factors. For example, how easy it is to verify your work and workplace address online. The chances of an inspection also depends on the workload of the naturalization office. Naturalization. So it means that even if you were not Japanese to begin with, or didn't have any parents of Japanese bloodline, you could, in theory, and it is possible to do so, become naturalized. Obviously, Tokyo and Osaka tend to be busier and therefore less likely to be able to inspect every applicant's home than more rural offices. The application process can be lengthy. The Ministry of Justice says the whole process takes from 6 months to a year. Again, not an impossibly long time. Citizens who have successfully completed the naturalization process report varying timeframes. Often it depends on how quickly you can gather all the necessary paperwork together. The good news is, while it may take a while to process your application, about 99% of all applications are approved. This is reported in Japan Times in 2010. 13,072 citizenship applications were approved, with just 234 rejected. So there you go. You can be black or brown or white even and become Japanese. So what Brutus is saying is, well, I just want to turn back time to when everybody thought that to be English or British was to mean a white person. And I'm sorry, Brutus, but you don't. We don't have a time machine. And we just have to live in a world as we find it, and, we can't just sort of just wish for things, particularly if we don't believe, particularly when we don't even believe in God. Now, the more observant of you will have noticed in the description that I'm talking about a certain tribe again. And with particular regard to Passover, which is coming up in April, starting on the 8th and ending on the 16th. Now, one of the things that I'm quite proud of myself for is the, you know, when I think Jews probably do that quite a lot, thinking, no, oh my God, why do we have to do this? Why? It makes no sense. This mixed fibre thing. Why can't we wear mixed fibres? Why can't we, do all these things that are forbidden to us? It's so tedious and it makes us seem so anal, and people, the Gentiles don't like us because we're always fussing about our food and, things being kosher, and we, why can't we just be normal and be like the others? And I'm afraid, it is all part of their chosen status, and they have to, do these things in order to remain together and apart from others. Because, of course, Jews wouldn't be Jews without their religion, Judaism, and Judaism is a long list of demands on their time and energy about when to do stuff and what to do, in the name of the God that has chosen them above others. And they have been given this special status, and actually quite a few of them, have said, well, go and choose somebody else. And it's too late, God has chosen them and they can't slough off their Jewishness, but I intend to help them with my register of Jews, because there are a few Jews who've said, well, I just want to be an ex-Jew. I don't want to be, a Jew that's, accused of being liberal and atheist and all that sort of thing. I just want to be an ex-Jew. And this was actually what Gilad Atzmon said to me about this time last year. And I kind of laughed at him and said, "Oh, you can't be an ex-Jew. It's your genetic inheritance." But he kind of lit a spark in me, and I thought, well, I'll think about some device whereby you can become an ex-Jew, and I came up with my idea of a register of Jews. So if you're ever struck off, then you become an ex-Jew, and you can happily assimilate and be normal and merge into the host population without them saying anti-Semitic things about you when you don't even want to be Jewish. So I think that's the best solution to the Gentile and Jew problem of Jewishness, and whether one can become an ex-Jew. Obviously, but the thing is, it's actually okay to do this, because Jews actually don't come in, they don't, okay, Jews come in 4 colours, so they're black Jews, brown Jews, yellow Jews, and white Jews. Did I say yellow Jews? Yeah. Anyway, they come in 4 colours, and they kind of know they're not supposed to be racist about each other, although quite often in practice they are a bit racist about each other, particularly the fairer skinned Jew against the darker skinned Jew. And I know the Muslims also do it, because I remember this time when I asked this veiled Muslim lady, this was the same one. I mean, she was actually quite forgiving about the men, about men wanting more than one wife, and she was the one who told me that, well, if I had just 4 pairs of shoes and I was offered more, I just wouldn't be able to say no, and men are probably a bit like me and my shoes, my Imelda Marcos, tendency about not being able to stop at 4 or 1, really. So she was the one who also said, oh gosh, I hope I haven't lost my train of thought. She was saying, why am I talking about shoes? What was I talking about, chat? I must get my thought. Come on, somebody help me. I wanted to tell you something about this woman who said this clever thing about shoes and wives. Damn. Okay, perhaps it'll come back to me. Oh, and now I've forgotten everything I was going to say. Oh yeah, I remember now. So I asked her about her husband, and how's your husband? And she said, oh, he's a bit dark. But he's all right, he's a faithful, loving husband, and he loves me, and I thought, oh, it's so funny that, because she was kind of, kind of fair skinned, although coffee coloured, so I guess he must be, dark brown, while she was just light brown. So yeah, even amongst coloured people, people just prize fairness, and they kind of think, oh, you really shouldn't go around with such a tan because it means you're some sort of peasant working in the fields, and so I guess that's how people think. Yeah, I was talking about the Jews, and Passover, and as you know, the Jews are supposed to, in their ethnostate, have their rituals, and one of their rituals is their what they have to do with their hametz, and hametz is leavened. It's called. Is it leaven or leaven? I know it's unleavened bread. But anyway, I've got the Wikipedia entry ready for you. Oh, yeah, and before I go, just remind me about a song that I may even sing to you. Okay, so Passover. This is, that they have to basically destroy their hametz. So, okay, leavening is made from, called hametz, is made from 5 types of grains combined with water and left to stand for more than 18 minutes. The consumption, keeping and owning of hametz is forbidden during Passover. Yeast and fermentation are not themselves forbidden, as seen for example by wine, which is required rather than merely permitted. According to halakha, the ownership of such hametz is also proscribed. Hametz does not include baking soda, baking powder, or light products. Although these are defined in English as leavening agents, they leaven by chemical reaction, not by biological fermentation. Thus, bagels, waffles, and pancakes made with baking soda and matzo meal are considered permissible, while bagels made with sourdough and pancakes and waffles made with yeast are prohibited. Anyway, so the prohibition of keeping these things. So they're basically saying you can't even own it. You can't even, you can't even put it out of sight because you're still owning it, even if you, put it in storage, for example. So what Jews have evolved over the centuries, it's really, when you think about it, it's so damn clever. So I thought, okay, what you do then is you sell options in your hametz. An option is basically you have a right to buy something. There is a piece of, you have, the property resides in your right to buy something, and then I thought, oh no, an option is not enough because you still own a right to buy the hametz, and therefore you are still by extension owning it. So actually the observant Jew anyway, has to completely sell it to someone, and of course he has to sell it to the Gentile, and So I'm kind of making the point that even Jews, when they were living in an ethnostate, had to sell their hametz to either somebody not in their country, not in Israel at all, or some Gentile living in Israel. So even in the Jewish ethnostate, there were minorities. And this is something, you have to bear in mind. And put it in your pipe and smoke it. And then you'll be saying, oh, but it's not just having, a few minority members here, there, and everywhere. It is, because they're everywhere, and there's too many and whatever. But the point is, in a way, it's not even so much a question of numbers, because I'm sure there are lots of white people who go and live in foreign countries where they themselves are a minority. A lot of them go and live in Japan, and they seem quite happy there. Probably because, Japan or Korea or, wherever they're living, Hong Kong, China, any part of the world that they happen to be happily residing in is all right. They're treated all right by the locals, so they don't mind being a member of the minority. But they mind living in their own country as a minority because it seems they are treated worse there. So I'm saying, just to try and sort out in your heads what it is that you dislike. So when you're just concentrating on kicking people out, you're not really being realistic in the exercise of your reasoning ability, because if you're saying kill and kick them out, you're just falling into the trap of hate speech. So I think you need to propose solutions short of killing and kicking people out. And this is where I come in. Me with my middle way of secular Quranism. And finally, we go back to the topic of the original, of the title. And it is all about, identity. It's like, obviously Brutus wants to be the kind of Englishman who is able to equate Englishness with whiteness and Britishness with whiteness, and he can only do this if he hasn't got a time machine by kicking people out. And this is his aspiration, and Millennial Woes, I suppose, to his credit, is maybe moving away from that for his own protection or for the protection of his own channel, and he doesn't want to say these things anymore. But while I was thinking these thoughts, I couldn't help but think of an old Vera Lynn song that goes, I better not sing. But anyway, it's a song called They'll Always Be in England. It's quite old-fashioned, but I'll read it out to you. I give you a toast, ladies and gentlemen. May this fair land we love so well in dignity and freedom dwell. While worlds may change and go awry, they'll always be in England while there's a country lane. Wherever there's a cottage small beside a field of grain, they'll always be in England while there's a busy street. Wherever there's a turning, a million marching feet, red, white and blue, what does it mean to you? Surely you're proud, shout it loud, Britain's awake, the empire too. But it's no longer there. We can depend on you. Freedom remains, these are the chains nothing can break. They'll always be in England, and England shall be free, if England means as much to you as England means to me. Now, will there always be in England? As long as as long as people call it England. We know that names change, don't they? Some people change their names, some people change the names of their country after a revolution or after a successful conquest. We might be forced to change the name of our country. So names can be very political, the sort of street names that are being, fought over, and because the song talks about empire that is no longer there, we might come to question whether there will always be in England, and will there always be in England? I think, all things being equal, why not? Unless, England is invaded by somebody, and then that person calls it somebody else and something else, and England will no longer be England and it'll be called something else. But that piece of land will remain, and obviously its inhabitants will remain, but obviously having to live under a different regime, possibly a different religion, and change their identity, whether they like it or not. And this, I think, is the crux of the matter, our identity crisis. It's not nice when we as individuals suffer an identity crisis, and those of us who can remember being adolescents, uncertain of our identity and fretting about it, will know how uncomfortable it is. And of course, if you talk in terms of your nation fretting about its identity collectively, then you can imagine the kind of angst and possibly neurosis and mental illness caused as a result of not having the kind of identity that we're comfortable with, that gives us the, dignity and protection that we yearn for. And of course, these are all political matters, and political matters must be decided according to our moral system. And our moral system can only come from religion, and religion is a very political matter indeed. So we're kind of stuck between this, politics and religion. Is it a dichotomy? Anyway, it's all controversial, and I think we can only rely on the philosophers who could perhaps help us on this. And I'm thinking of Confucius. And Confucius was, very clear about a number of things, and his idea of the rectification of names should help us tidy up our minds about, using words correctly. And he's basically saying that if you... Do I need to read it out to you? Then it'll become, an impossibly long stream, and then you'll get bored. But anyway, for the sake of completeness, I will do this for you, and you're probably not even listening, but just, chatting to each other, communing with each other in your desire for your ethnostate, I suppose. But I'm saying that even ethnostates have minorities, and it is something you have to think about, to treat your minorities fairly without doing a disservice to yourselves. And I've got all the ideas, and of course you must be a patriarchy, and you must no longer be a matriarchy, and to be a patriarchy you will have to shame sluts, and then you'll all be running out of the room again because because really unofficially your religion is not Christianity. That went out the window a long time ago. Your unofficial religion is the worship of sluts, and your practice of your religion is your culture of extramarital sex, your globo homo gay disco thing. So I'll have to tell you about what Confucius said about the rectification of names, and I actually was trying to equate it to algebra, about the all these terms I can't quite remember, because in algebra you kind of have a value, right, and it is through the something value that you can work out the values of all the other symbols and stuff. So I was trying to get Jen to explain that, but she just wasn't cooperating. think values will give me the actual absolute value equations, I think. The variables. Yeah, so you have to know the actual value of something, and then you can work out, the sum of the other parts. And I think this is what Confucius meant. It's like, the word you have to use must be correct, or if you use words carelessly and incorrectly, your conclusion will be wrong, your answer will be wrong. And so he says this: a superior man, in regard to what he does not know, shows a cautious reserve. If names be not correct, language is not in accordance with the truth of things. If language be not in accordance with the truth of things, affairs cannot be carried on to success. When affairs cannot be carried on to success, proprieties and music do not flourish. When proprieties and music do not flourish, punishments will not be properly awarded. When punishments are not properly awarded, the people do not know how to move hand or foot. Therefore, a superior man considers it necessary that the names he uses may be spoken appropriately, and also that what he speaks may be carried out appropriately. When the superior man requires, what the superior man requires is just that in his words, there may be nothing incorrect. But, you can't expect uneducated people to use words correctly, even with the best of wills. And obviously, my legal training has helped me use words more accurately, because, a word out of place in your contract is no good. So, but then, there are people who tell lies. So that's even more incorrect than just inadvertently, using the wrong word or not quite the right word for what you mean. So I'm afraid Brutus has been equating race with nationality, and he's making a category error, and category errors are, common mistakes made by people who confuse, vaguely similar ideas with each other, and conflating them, and I hope that people will eventually be allowed to allow themselves to discuss this rationally, and instead of getting cross and then not talking to me because they're afraid I'm going to win the argument, and then they'll look foolish. And I say to them, I don't mind conceding a point if you can prove to me that you're right and I'm wrong, using the rules of truth, logic, and morality. I really would concede. It's only I just get impatient with people who want to win the argument even though they haven't won the argument, and expect me to concede just because they've been arguing with me for a long time. I'm not going to let you win the argument if you haven't really won it, if you haven't conceded, if you haven't proven to me that, the facts I rely on are not quite true, or my reasoning is illogical, or I'm not quite following the rules. I really am very happy to concede I'm wrong, because I'm so very rarely wrong that I just don't mind on the odd occasion to admit that I've made a mistake. But it's really people who refuse to debate because they don't want to lose the argument. I think you're the people who have the problem, and it is really sad that Millennial Woes can't bring himself to talk to me, because I think I could clarify a lot of things, really quickly, and so things can move forward in a unthreatening civic nationalist way. As for you ethno-nationalists, look, you to get to ethno-nationalism, you have to go past civic nationalism. It's oh, okay, this is here we go again. You're in Idaho, you want to get to the Pacific, but the Pacific is ethno-nationalism, Idaho is, uncontrolled immigration, and you want to get to you have to get to the Pacific, or you think you do. And I'm saying I can get you to Oregon, and you'll be perfectly happy there. Oregon is the analogy for civic nationalism. And I'm saying, well, but if you want to go further, you'll be on your own. But in order to get to ethno-nationalism, you have to get to civic nationalism, and the reasoning is very simple. Which people operate most successfully their ethno-nationalism? It's the Jews, of course. It's not even the Japanese. I mean, the Japanese got nuked twice. And China is an empire. So the people with the greatest sense of themselves is still the Jews, because of their Judaism. And so if you're talking about who has the most effective ethno-nationalism, then you would have to acknowledge that Judaism is divine ethno-nationalism, and therefore Islam is divine civic nationalism. And there's just no point in anyone trying to devise a better form of ethno-nationalism when they just can't even compete against divine ethno-nationalism, which is Judaism. So, I mean, it's so powerful that the Jews managed to stay in existence without a homeland for 2,000 years and managed to get their homeland back. This is how powerful divine ethno-nationalism is. So, that there's nothing that you can do to catch up and supersede that, unless you try the other thing, which is divine civic nationalism. And anyway, the alt-right are too degenerate to become Jews anyway, and also the idea is not for people to become Jews, but to become righteous Gentiles, because there's going to be, I don't think Jews want everyone to become Jews, because it'd be like opening your exclusive club to the hoi polloi, so they don't want to do that. While Islam is more like a political party that wants everyone to join. So Islam is very happy to have you if you want to join. So maybe go there if you want to worship the Abrahamic God as a Gentile. And also the worship of the Abrahamic God has helped the Jews, shall we say. So you could be oversimplifying things by saying, all right, okay, if worshipping the most powerful God conceivable has worked out for the Jews, then maybe we should do this too. And I'm saying, yeah, you can do this too, but you don't have to become Jews, because you're too degenerate to do all the things that they do. So why don't you take your first easy steps and kind of do Judaism light, and that's Islam, and you need a new religion anyway, because Christianity is kaput. I've tried to make it easier for you by giving you secular Quranism, which is Islam light, and this means you don't have to convert to Islam. It means you can support secular Quranism as an atheist or an agnostic or even a polytheist, because it won't punish you for not being Muslim, because that's not the idea, because chapter 2 verse 256 of the Quran guarantees freedom of belief. So, what's there not to like? Did I explain enough about, whether they'll always be in England or in America? It's like I know you're worried about, the end of Western civilization as we know it. And sometimes, we just happen to be living at a period of time when everything changes. So we might as well make the best of things. Okay, it probably wasn't much fun to be a French revolutionary, but I don't know, they had some interesting times then, didn't they? With their cult of of the supreme being and the cult of reason, and they tried but it failed, but they lived in interesting times, and maybe we can just sort of hunker down and enjoy the interesting times to come, forearmed with our knowledge that religion is absolutely necessary to keep our group together. Now, this is something that just occurred to me today about religion, being the force that binds people together. So it can bind people together in a supranational way, across borders and everything, but it can also bind a nation together by I guess by becoming, say, Muslim or whatever. And its rules would be better than the degenerate sexual liberation that's being forced down our throats. So, it's time to be thinking of, mending our ways and changing the trajectory of a disastrous course, and not necessarily blaming Jews or anyone else, really. Maybe you can think yourself into a position where you accept that these things have been sent to try you, for you to work things out, for you to finally recognize that you cannot do without religion, and therefore you cannot do without God, and you better rearrange the thoughts in your mind about how best to think and how to speak and how to act. Because although you don't, if you can think yourself into the mindset of every cloud has a silver lining, and this reminds me of Pangloss, who said we live in the best of all possible worlds, because because there is only one world, and it is the world that God created, and whatever He sends is a sign for us to interpret and to learn from, and therefore suffering is can be a source of redemption if we are not too proud to accept the lessons of truth, logic, and morality. So we can repent and adopt secular Quranism, or just carry on, starting more world wars and blowing ourselves up in the process. I mean, you choose. Now, OV, accusing me of being a Jewish shill, you've been accused of the same thing, and the trouble with you, OV, is that you've done this for so long, there is a danger that you will continue doing this until you pop your clogs. You're going to laugh as a Nazi until the end of your days. And that's why, it's a shame that you're, doing this and you're thinking this role playing is more important than submitting to truth, logic, and morality. I don't know if it's, bad parenting or whatever, but, I think you owe it to yourself to submit to truth, logic, and morality to save you from error and disaster, and particularly the error and disaster and the career consequences of lobbying as a Nazi. I mean, surely you already know that Hitler tried and failed to have a German empire, so he's already a loser. So what would be the point of following in his disastrous footsteps? He basically took the Germans off a cliff, and you're saying, let's do that? I mean, it's crazy. I don't know why. I mean, a few people have been trying to warn you. Elliot Blatt, I think, and even Aaron Ammerhood, and saying, perhaps because they acknowledge that you can be intelligent and charming, and you know, you have the energy that could be better diverted to something more constructive than LARPing as a Nazi. But I think it's become a kind of behavioural addiction now, and you can't get over. It's like you don't know what else to become now. It's all you ever knew, or all that you can ever remember, and you've just got to keep doing it in order to give yourself this identity, even though you suspect it can't be doing you or your career prospects any good. It might even result in you not being able to. Well, it could get into trouble. It could result in you never finding a woman to marry you. But perhaps that's what you're actually avoiding. You don't actually want to take a wife. You don't want to have children. That's why you're LARPing as a Nazi and calling me a Jewish shell, because you have to say these things to play your role as a LARPing Nazi. But I mean, that's the trouble with the alt-right. It's like you are all suffering from neurosis and mental illness, and I can't even begin to diagnose them, except that you are crippled by your conceit that, I mean, it's already irrational. You think, oh, you don't need religion. Your magic white skin will save you from the vicissitudes of bad government. But it doesn't. You're already talking about, oh, we're being white genocided and our governments don't care about us. And so, you have to make up your mind whether your magic white skin is going to save you or it's not. And if it's not, you have to think of something else. And it's something to do with finding and following a religion that works. And you have to admit that Christianity has failed. But you won't, because you are crippled by your pride, which means you think you are better because you're ignorant. You think you're smarter because you're ignorant. And that's the thing with you and the Jews as well. It's like either they're smarter than you or they're not. So you can't have it both ways. Like, oh, Jews have low IQ, but they're still, kicking you around. Well, actually, no, you have low IQ. And that's why even if you were to get rid of your Jews, you'd have your own elites abusing and exploiting you. But I think it's a sign of your low status hopelessness that you're left with nothing other than LARPing as a form of political protest. So OV does this, Jen Shaft does this, and the ones who don't are not capable of submitting to truth, logic, and morality, which is why they don't want to talk to me, even though I could put them right on so many things. Now I'm going to read the chat for something sensible. I can't find anything. Now, I've been accused by OV of slander. What? How have I slandered you? I'm not LARPing as a Quranist and agnostic. I am a Quranist and an agnostic. I recognise myself as a Gentile, Dr. Mengele. I never said I was a Jew. But there you go. You want it both ways. So on the one hand, you complain of the Jews being predators preying on you, and even as you can make this complaint, you're saying they're smarter than you because a predator is higher up on the food chain, and you're admitting that you are lower down on the food chain than they are. So even as you complain about Jews, you're kind of implicitly acknowledging your inferiority, and even as you complain about Muslims, you also acknowledge that it's their religion that gives them the special protection that they need to live in Western countries, because the West protects people with, protects those, protects freedom of belief, guarantees freedom of belief with the First Amendment. So it's the atheists who LARP as Nazis who are the ones unprotected. So they're the people who kind of turn up at a live chat and find that everyone has a wrench because of their protected characteristic, and you have none. And what are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. Are you saying I still don't want a wrench, or do you want a wrench? And in order to get your blue wrench, you need to find a religion, and it's not just any religion, it's got to be one that works. Christianity is kaput. The next one on that worships the most powerful God conceivable is Islam. So what are you waiting for? I've been talking for 67 minutes. No, I don't. I really don't want to argue with you because you have no arguments. And if you really want to argue, you can say all you like about me in the comments. Because really, it's become a bit of a behavioural addiction for a lot of you. You just want to hear your own voice talking on somebody's platform. It doesn't matter if you're listened to or not. It affirms your identity as you LARP as a Nazi. And so that's what you do, and it's not particularly profitable. And because you are such degenerates, nobody will listen to you, and we're all tarred with the same brush of being degenerates who can't string a sentence together, or who can't follow logic, who can't follow a religion that would enable them to restore the patriarchy, who don't in fact want to restore the patriarchy because they can't bear the thought of marrying a woman of their own race and paying for her children. And that is how degenerate Western man is now. See, there's just nothing in the chat that is anything like a question or a comment, just insults. There's no point, Ovi, starting your stream on your channel and saying you have more viewers and then closing it down. It's just, you're just feeding your behavioural addiction. I want my streams to stay on, and even if they get struck down, I don't care, because I'm not going to be forced into committing suicide and deleting my videos and wasting my time. I'm not going to do that. Because I have my principles and I know what I'm supposed to be doing, which is propagating a very easy to understand message that you can't accept. Because rejecting truth, logic and morality is the mark of Western man. And Brundlefly, what solutions have you got? Nothing. You have nothing to offer but your idolatrous, doomed religion of Christianity. And everyone knows that, and you know that, and that's why you just LARP. Because there's nothing left for you to do. It's either LARP or admit that you need a religion and what that new religion has to be. I think I've made all my points reasonably clearly. I don't think I've forgotten anything. We're just living on the cusp of a change of direction in the West. Because it'll only be a matter of time before Western governments throw out liberalism. And I'm one of the first. I'm one of the few who called it out nice and early, together with Christianity. And off you all go to OV's dream called, what's it called? It's got this Italian name. Fratelli di Europa. So off you go. Dr. Mengele isn't even Christian. And neither is Walrus. You know, that's what's so pathetic about it. You're not even Christian. So it's like carrying some sort of plastic shield that you don't even believe in. That you know is going to get, well, not protect you. Which means you're all mad because you're not making any sense and nothing you ever say makes any sense. And then you think, well, why, in the entire West, isn't there a single person who is capable of putting two and two together to save Western civilization? But apparently not. Some of you may know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham bargaining with God and saying, don't destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, surely you can't destroy all these people. And it was all about a minyan, which is a group of 10 men that are supposed to gather in a synagogue. And apparently in all of Sodom and Gomorrah, there were not 10 observant Jewish men or righteous Jews to stop Sodom and Gomorrah from being destroyed. Lot was in fact a judge, a Jewish judge apparently, but he just went along with the craze Canaanites who I guess were matriarchal and were, practicing all kinds of perversions, including, allowing temple prostitutes of, male and female and child sacrifice and all the wicked things. So that was, basically there weren't, 10 good men in the whole of Sodom and Gomorrah to for Abraham to say, well, don't destroy, innocent people, because there weren't even 10 good men. And I just fear that, in all of Western civilization there won't be 10 good men prepared, or 10 honourable and influential men prepared to defend truth, logic and morality, because you all think your magic white skin will save you from all the bad things that's about to come your way. So I'm sorry to hear about that. I can only warn and advise, and you can only throw rocks at me, it seems, because you're too crippled by your pride to use truth, logic and morality to repent and correct yourselves. Thank you for listening.